Good morning, this is Rich Nelson with Allendale. A special update for you guys. This is January 12th of 2017. We have a series of USDA reports here, so this is going to take just a little bit longer than we normally would. 4 separate reports were released from USDA today, which do impact the grain markets. As far as the trade's attentions, let's start off with these numbers on production here. USDA lowered both corn and soybean production on today's report. This is, of course, the completed fall harvest once they got these final numbers in. Corn crop was reduced from 15.226 billion bushels to 15.148. Soybean crop was reduced from 4.361 billion bushels to now 4.307. So the soybean production drop is certainly one which did get the trade's attention and will be the driver of most of these numbers we see later on here in these reports. As far as how USDA did this, well, they did drop acreage a little bit here, and that was expected for both corn and soybeans due to those farm program acreage numbers released by the Farm Service Agency. So we expected lower acreage. The surprise here was that we dropped yields just a little bit here for both corn and soybeans. Now 174.6 and 52.1. So lower production is the driver of most of these numbers. As far as the second report here, well, we've got what we call the grain stocks report. And when we mention grain stocks specifically in this way, we mean a quarterly count of how much grain is left over. In this case, as of December 1. So this kind of fills us in with some of the blanks here we have regarding demand from September through November. On the corn numbers, 12.4 is what they came out with, and that was pretty much right on the trade's, a little higher than trade's expectation of 12.3 billion bushels. Soybeans came in a little smaller than expected as far as the amount left over as of December 1. 2.895, just a little bit lower, about 40 million bushels than the trade expectation. Wheat stocks very similar to the trade expectation, 2.073, and that was just a little higher than the 2.056 numbers the trade was expecting. So annual production summary, like I mentioned, lower production, that was a little bullish. As far as these grain stocks, you can probably argue slightly bearish on corn, slightly bullish on beans. Now, once we kind of combine these numbers and we look at USDA's rest of the balance sheet changes, we saw some interesting issues as far as corn stocks as a whole. Now, in this case, we're meaning corn ending stocks, what we left over at the end of the marketing year, in this case as of August 31st for corn and soybeans. Now, as far as USDA's changes, once we lower the production a little bit here, we did also make some moderate changes on the demand end here. In this case, a little bit lower on feed and residual, a little higher on ethanol. They did lower the ending stock number, 2.403, now 2.355, and that was a little bit lower than the trade's expectation. So a little bullish on the corn numbers. Over on the world side, looking at their numbers, they didn't change anything regarding South America as far as their corn numbers. So nothing there to speak of. And in fact, looking at the rest of the list, no changes on production. So a slight drop in world corn ending stocks from the U.S. numbers. Now, we mentioned on the soybean side, this lower production is going to be the driver of the balance sheet changes. And looking at the rest of their balance sheet, they only dropped imports by about 5 million bushels. And what we call residual use, in other words, the usage that USDA can't quite quantify, that was raised up 1. Important for us on the exports as well as the crush, those were left unchanged. So USDA decided to lower production and didn't offset that in any way on the demand side in a serious way. As far as world numbers on beans, USDA did make some moderate changes there. The Brazilian soybean crop was raised up from 102 to now 104 million tons. They left Argentina unchanged. Net result, though, with a slightly increased numbers for Brazil, but lower for the U.S. side, they actually lowered world stocks on the soybean side. So that's a little positive. On the wheat numbers, as far as the balance sheet, now they don't normally change production on this report, and they didn't this time around either. They did recognize some problems with feed and residual, just like they did with corn. And they therefore raised up the ending stocks from 1.143 to now 1.186. On the world side of things here, actually surprisingly, no real changes to speak of regarding all those Eastern European countries as well as Russia. They left most of those unchanged. Russia only up 0.5 But like I said, Ukraine and all these other guys were left unchanged. Argentina crop also up 0.6 million tons. Now, actually, the biggest surprise for us beyond the drop in production was on the fourth report, which normally does not get much billing, winter wheat seedings. This is important for us because this is actually the first report of the entire year for the 2017 planting season. So USDA told us that winter wheat plantings this past fall, 32.4 million acres. That was actually a drop from last year now, about 3.8. And on a percentage basis, that's a 10% drop in winter wheat plantings. This is important for us because, yes, it does tighten up the wheat balance sheet a little bit here for this coming year. That is a little positive on the 2017 balance sheet for wheat. Now, for us on the corn and soybean side, we have to watch this very carefully. This cut in that acreage in the plains means we have a few extra acres available for corn and soybean planting this coming spring. How much of that goes into soybeans will be an interesting question here, but like I mentioned, for right now, this will be considered a bullish report for wheat, but as far as the big picture, maybe give us some more questions regarding planning for next spring. So bottom line with these numbers, the soybean production drop gets the attention. Number two is going to be the drop in winter wheat seedings. The market will call this report bullish here and give us a moderate rebound. This does not change the general story, though, for this year and next year. If you have any questions about these reports, give Allendale a call, 1-800-262-7538.